always make the point that when we come to a period in our life here in South Africa, and I suspect it will be very soon, where we stop celebrating and counting the number of no load shedding days, then that will on its own represent a major, major victory for us. I mean, the fact that we are celebrating this, it means that we are still in an awkward place. So we are not necessarily out of the woods yet. So we will not tell any lies or claim easy victories. I think we're going to ensure that we are very consistent in our messaging. Coming from the board, Dr. Mteto has been at pains to explain that this generation recovery plan has not necessarily reached its full potential. We are in the right path. All matrices are pointing to a positive performance, and in fact, we are far exceeding where we expected to be this time. And of course, we still have an ambition of achieving that 70% EAF by 2025, and the team is on course to do exactly that. And then today we chose that we use the occasion of 200 days plus one for us to just give you an update on the generation performance. Of course, we have had a cadence hitherto of a weekly, at the most bi-weekly media briefing. But I think that the health and the performance of the grid has made it possible for us to give you this update over, if you like, an extended period of time, because we must come to a stage where we normalize the absence of no load shedding. And in fact, we get to a situation where we'll say load shedding is behind us. I want to say that at the right time, when the ESCOM board first, of course, being informed by the team at Generation, of course, led by the CEO, they'll advise the ministry at which point do we call it. But where we are, when I say call it, to say to the country that we are out of the woods. But there's a tremendous amount of work that is being done. And I hope that during the Q&A session, we will be in a position to surface that. So I thought that I must just do a few reflections on how we managed to get here. So I mean, if you were to look at the journey that we have traveled, so the president gets to introduce to the country the Energy Action Plan, which is a government comprehensive response to the resolution of load shedding. So there is an admission that the load shedding represent, if you like, an albatross on the South African economy. In economic terms, we call it a structural constraint. So it's complicit to the fact that the economy's growth ambitions have been significantly depressed together with the inefficiencies on the logistics side. And of course, a major disruption on people's daily lives, interrupting business, responsible for the unemployment bloodbath. We know that we now have some of the highest recorded unemployment in the world. So I think it's not a metal that we are carrying with pride. It's something that we want to shake off. We really want to get to a situation where we're able to grow the South African economy. And if you look at some of the pundits and some of the reputable institutions in the world, not just the South African Reserve Bank and also the National Treasury, is that the outlook is positive. And in fact, the Bureau of Economic Research at Stellenbosch, one of the most renowned research institutions in the field of economics, they make the point that with the advent of the resolution of load shedding, the sustained supply of electricity, and the reforms on the Operation Vulindlela and the President's stated intentions of accelerating those reforms, the South African economy could grow by about 3.5% in the next 18 to 24 months. So that's a major victory from where we are. Of course, National Treasury putting at 0.9% conservatively next year. I'm just saying some of the projections that are coming out. Of course, when the Minister of Finance delivers the medium-term budget policy statement, he will state with a great deal of authority how National Treasury sees it. But what's the overall point I'm making is that the kind of improvement we are seeing on the generation side is having a positive impact on the economy. It's also having a positive impact on what I call the happiness index. I mean, if they were to compute what I call a happiness index, I think people are in a better space now. You wake up with the lights on. Of course, there's a new phenomenon that we are dealing with of load reduction. This has little to do with the challenges of the generation capacity, so are generating more than enough to meet the demand. These are downstream challenges that we are faced with, both on the ESCOM side and also on the municipal side, and that's why Mr. Bala is hard at work working with municipalities, and I'm leading that effort to see how best we are able to address that situation. And of course, accompanying that is the aging infrastructure, the lack or absence of investments on the distribution infrastructure. Just the other day, where in Tshwane, they lost about 58% of the customers could not get electricity as a result of the failures at their substation. Of course, we'll work with the municipality there, and the situation is across the country. We're in Gqeberha about 2 months ago, the same situation. Of course, gale force winds obliterated, damaged the infrastructure, but some of it was as a result of lack of maintenance. If we were to do the necessary maintenance, I think the infrastructure would have been in a position to withstand the kind of environmental conditions that they were confronted with. So the point I'm making is that we're in good space, so this is a really positive going into the future. And the intention is to sustain this. We just concluded our strategic session as a ministry with all the SOEs, ESCOM at the center of the conversation, beginning to articulate how best we are going to create a sufficient generation headspace to allow the South African economy to grow. And I'm sure at the right time, together with the chair of ESCOM, the group CEO, we'll be able to announce to the country, if you like, this ESCOM 2.0. When you reset ESCOM, ESCOM is going to be a big player also on new generation, especially on renewables. But we'll tell that story at the right time. Just a reflection of how we got here. So like I said, the President announced that energy action plan, which has got 5 outcomes. The number one outcome of that energy action plan, which was inaugurated by the President in July of 2022, was to fix ESCOM. So just a general admission that if ESCOM works, then we'll be in a situation where the lights are on. So we have introduced a number of reforms to have a new generation capacity coming from private sector, largely, if you like, renewable energy in the form of wind and solar. But the admission is that you could do that, but for as long as ESCOM is not functioning, you are not going to recover. So that energy action plan says we needed to do that. And one of the things that it lists as the outcome was to say that we must introduce the reforms or undermine the ESCOM vertical integration, do away with the monopoly on the generation side, de-risk that side, because if ESCOM fails and is a monopoly, then energy generation in the country fails. And then we have seen about a week ago, we officially inaugurated the National Transmission Company of South Africa, with its own board. Of course, the group of board of ESCOM is still responsible for the overall direction as determined by the shareholder in the form of the ministry. So we have an institutional arrangement that is in place that displays, if you like, all features and characteristics of an organization that is autonomous. That's very important. I'm making very big distinction, independence, autonomous, and because it still fits in the overall group strategy of ESCOM, just that it executes that leg on transmission. And then on the back of the introduction of the Energy Action Plan, so the Energy Action Plan is it's an intervention, if you like, a crisis intervention on how we are going to address this situation. Very articulate, explicit in terms of the areas of priority. And then in October of the same year, 2022, then the President then appoints the board of men and women, exceptional credentials, tried and tested, enormous experience in running big institutions, a great appreciation of the energy ecosystem, and of course bringing all sorts of skills that are required to run an organization of the magnitude of Eskom, the biggest electricity SOE on the African continent, and one of the biggest in the world. Is an SOE just focus on delivery of electricity in the respective countries. And that board, of course, now is led by Ms. Dr. Mteto Nyati. So this is a board that has made it its business to ensure that they bring to bear their skills collectively, singularly and collectively, to the benefit of the South African people. Of course, I make the point that being on the Eskom board and also the leadership of Eskom, especially the Group CEO, has been a poison chalice. But these men and women, patriotic South Africans, took if you like, the challenge, raised their hands and said, someone has to execute this. And they were able to come up and say, we are available to help the country to do this. And I really, at this moment, just want to say to Mr. Dr. Mteto and your team, thank you very much, Doc, for your patriotism. Just saying to the country that you are ready, able, and willing to help us to resolve this crisis. So thank you very much, Doc, to you and the Eskom board. And I hope that you will continue to help to lead this institution. Like I said, we are not out of the woods yet. So the issues around consistency, predictability is important. It's the stated ambition of the shareholder here to continue to work with this board to ensure that we deliver the kind of results that we are seeing, but then transition to the next phase, what I refer to as Eskom 2.0. That's my own reference. I'm sure the board will come with a much more clinical if you like, description of what constitutes the next phase. And then just on the issue of leadership, then the board made it their business to ensure that there's leadership stability at the board level. And that leadership stability started with ensuring that we're able, at the apex of the organization, at least on the administrative side, or the executive side rather, we needed to ensure that we have a full-time group CEO. Of course, we transitioned from the work that was done by the then acting CEO, Mr. Khalib Kasim. He really held the fort very well, supported by the rest of the team. And then the board then made an inspired appointment in the form of Mr. Dan Marokane, who brought with him a great deal of expertise, so a great deal of depth and understanding of the workings of Eskom. So he's not a newcomer, so he was able to hit the ground running. So the learning curve really was not steep, because he's someone who came from those ranks, went into private sector, and then came back again because the country called. And I really want to say at this moment, Mr. Marokani, of course, he left a very cushy, attractive job, very little pressures in the demands, but raised his hand also to say that the country is calling, I'm willing to come back and assist in whichever manner that we find appropriate, and the board and the shareholder found that manner that is appropriate for, is that of him being the group CEO. So thank you very much, Mr. Marokani, for having raised your hand. And we are looking forward to your leadership and stewardship in ensuring that we are able to steer this ship on a day-to-day basis. And we are beginning to see the kind of results that we want to see, not just in terms of the megawatts, but just the mood inside Eskom. Very buoyant, positive. People are committed to be part of the brand. They wear the badge with pride. I mean, a lot of them would never have worn this badge with pride about a year ago, when we experienced the highest intensity of load shedding, were part of jokes, vulgar, directed at people at Eskom, for reasons that could be understood, because people were experiencing great difficulty, and what they were seeing is an organization that is unable to meet the expectations of the country and its designs, and people were aggrieved, and you could see it in the performance of the economy, just the general mood. But with the work that Dr. Mteto has done, the work that Caleb has done, and now that the work that Mr. Marokani is taking to a different level, we are proud Escomites. So we wear this with great pride because we are contributing to the resolution of the South African problem. And then there was then an effort to ensure that at the station level, we get people with the right skills to do plant maintenance. The lights are on, the EAF is up, the PCLF is also up because we are building for this future of ensuring that the load shedding is something behind us. And of course,